I like to read a lot. I read a lot of books, and I like to read about history. I like to read about World War II, the Black Plague, the French Revolution. You can tell a person's character by the books he reads, it's one said.
I'm here in Bristol at the Clifton Suspension Bridge with Robin Gibb.
You certainly are.
Robin Gibb, you're fascinated in history. That's your hobby. Now,
That's right, Leo, yeah.
what are we doing here in Bristol?
Well, I'll tell you, Leo. I'll tell you. No, we're in Bristol because of Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Aha.
Famous engineer of the 1800s, Leo.
Right.
Right, and he built this bridge, or should I say designed this bridge and had it built in about 1830, but he didn't live to see it completed. He died in 1859, and the bridge was completed in 1864.
Fantastic.
There we go.
And you obviously know a lot about this stuff. I mean, history is your subject.
Yes, I love it.
How'd you get into it?
Quite by accident. Well, it was not quite by accident in a way. It was just that something... I liked it at school. It was one of my best subjects, but I never really got to learn as much as I wanted to at school because they didn't spend as much time as I wanted to spend on it. So it was after I left school that I learned the most.
We always associate yourself and Barry and Morris, the Bee Gees, with America. And, you know, here we are in England, and you're fascinated in British history. Is there any American history that you've been interested in?
I think, by and large, it's the reason I'm mostly interested in British history is because I am English. We are English.
Right.
Born in the Isle of Man, but nonetheless English.
Because that's another
British
thing that not many people know.
When I say the British history, I mean British history. I don't just mean English history. British history.
Right.
Which is very important, Leo. As you well know.
Who was do you think, I mean, was Brunel one of your favourite characters through history?
It's not so much that Brunel was one of my favourite characters. He's a very important part of Victorian history, British history, and as such, it's very important if you're going to know about history to know about Brunel.
Most of all, my music's always been my hobby, and history. I've been probably a historian.
Okay,
and historian, get the English right. And I'm very interested in old buildings and churches, and historically speaking, I like history, but I don't like to go I don't like ancient history. I like to go back to about the 1000s, you know, and I love English history, particularly going back to the Norman period.
Historian versus.
Yeah, it fascinates me. I'm a great deal. I love that, and but there's great aspects. We had the Great Plague of London and the fire and all, and there's aspects of London still there. That, I was actually at a place where I could still smell the burning because they were digging up a building to build a new office block, and they invited me down to see the site, and there were burning beams, still smelling of smoke, you know, but it was all cordoned off. And the guy with all the hard hats on was showing me, and they said there are 3 days to get what they needed for the London Museum, because then it was all going to be filled in for the new building. Yeah. But it was right in the middle of the city of London. So I was smelling smoke from 1666, which is incredible.
That's mad.
Freaky, it's spooky.
We're talking about some surreal things here.
But it's real, surreal and real.
Yeah.
At the same time.
How did they get it all to fit together? How did they build it? I mean, there must have been in different sections or something.
Different parts. They built each part as they went. As you can see, separate parts here, and the bolts here you can see on the ground. They built in different sections. Almost, they had one part finished. I suppose as they went, I mean, you can see actually how they actually did it. There's the lines across the bridge. So, you know, they couldn't really build, because it's not supported at all, this bridge. It's fully suspended right across. And another thing, you're probably wondering why it's so narrow.
Yeah,
Go on.
As well, the cars, I mean, surely they didn't have cars in those days.
No, they didn't have the
horse and
cortinas
carriages
and things like that. He didn't even count on the cortinas. What he was counting on was the horse and carriage, hansom cabs and all that stuff, which is pretty much what it's still built for, because they never ever reinforced the bridge, which is a tribute to
Brunel.
Brunel.
It's a good point, actually, that we've walked most of it, and now we find out it's unsupported.
Completely suspended, Leon. Completely suspended.
This place inside was 1,000 years old, and it was where Joan of Arc was sentenced to die in the 1300s by the 4 sitting bishops. And in the Star Chamber at the front of the house is where they passed sentence on her and sent to France for her to be burnt. But then, during the Reformation of Henry VIII, it was closed down as a Catholic prebendal and became a farm after that. For larger counties, even outside Oxfordshire, it was a main prebendal where they issued the records of burial, penalties for crimes, marriages, records of marriages and things like that. All of those things were done by the church in those days and not by the state. So this was a centre for that. All prebendals were. And it was on Henry II and Thomas Becket was where they were still divided. And because of the assassination of Becket by Henry II, that the church became less important in the running of the country. Up until then, it was very important in the running of a lot of countries. And in this country is where the state became more important after Becket in the running of the affairs of the country as opposed to the church. So the church lost a lot of influence. When we moved in, we wanted to have that sort of 1500s look about it. And we got Stuart Interiors, which actually do a lot of work for Windsor Castle. It's what they call Grade 2 in this country means that you can't change the outside of the building. But there may be parts of the inside you can change. Grade 1 means you can't change any of it. This is actually where you can't change the outside, but there are some parts of the inside of the inside structure you can change. Actually, we did it all.
Yes,
the SS Great Britain.
That's right, one of Brunel's great achievements, and this was built in 1839 and launched in 1843. It did a lot of voyages to Australia. It did its first voyage to New York in 1845, and back, by the way. And from then on, it went on to Australian.
How many days did it take to get to Australia?
52 on this ship. And then it kept doing it until eventually it ran aground in the Falklands and stayed there until it was brought back in 1870.
And they actually towed it in here.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and the Preservation Society are looking after it, Restoration Society. They are doing it all up. And most of it is done. I think there's some masts missing up
and
there.
it's going to look. They're going to try and make it look as if as like the day it was launched in 1843.
We've got the rules for the passengers from the.
That's right. If you were a passenger in 1843, you wouldn't be allowed any hay. Oh yeah, travelling to Australia, 52 days. And look at the rules, Leo.
It says, number 1 here, every passenger shall rise at 7 a.m. unless otherwise permitted by the surgeon.
That's right, yeah.
And there's another one.
Getting you out of bed.
Unbelievable.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Now, this is first-class passengers. What did they pay to travel on here?
70 guineas. So if you were a first-class passenger...
That's a lot of money in this day.
You have to roll up your own bed, sweep the decks, including the space under the bottom.
And you wouldn't get any breakfast until that was done.
That's right. And you'd have to take out your mattress and air it over the railings of the deck.
It says on Sunday the passengers must muster at 10 a.m. and they will be expected to appear in clean and decent apparel. The day to be observed as religiously as circumstances will admit. Why don't we look around? Let's have a look around.
Yeah, there's lots to see. Come with this lad. Over here.
Right.
Yes.
In the 1920s, a lot of these buildings were still separate. There were clustered of buildings, almost like a village, and then they were joined onto each other. Especially the back part to where the door is going in the back, that was joined on. There used to be an alley through there. We go to the other side. And they became as one. I mean, again, well, obviously the Grand Hall connected this to that. And, I mean, there was a time when I first moved in, somebody walked down here, before I had the gate, somebody walked down here and tapped on the window and said, is this Long Crendon Village? This way, Leo.
Right.
Careful of the legs.
OK.
Just on the bridge. One of the first bridges, by the way, this one.
Really?
Yes. First ship's bridge.
And one of the first ships to use metal rigging, is that right?
That's right. First, because beforehand they used to use hemp, you see, but this enabled the ship to, you know, different angles and better support for the mast.
He was a great engineer. He also had some strange idiosyncrasies about him, didn't he?
Yes, the Great Western Railway, which was one of his big deals.
Yeah, went from London to Bristol.
London to Bristol.
Or Bristol to London, rather, because he started here,
That's right, yes. He opened up Bristol to London, literally, and all of England by doing it. But when he actually went out to build the first tracks there, that was to take the trains, he personally went on his own with a walking stick, and walked the entire ground between London and Bristol, and testing it. For the railway tracks to be
all
built
the way from Bristol to London himself, because he didn't trust anybody else to do it.
That's right. It was complete. Everybody thought he was crazy, but obviously there was a method to his madness. Which brings me to my latest suggestion, the one I'm going to make to you right now. I think to keep this sort of mood of Brunel and the fire burning, as it were, and it's a perfect thing to end the day on. I think me and you should walk the same route as Brunel back to London now.
To London?
Absolutely. I think you can do it, Leo.
We'll test out the ground as we go.
Let's do it. Don't forget the walking cane.
Is it far to London, then?
No, it's about 500 miles, I think, sort of roughly. You know, we cut up for it.
Do you think we'll get there?
It's only about 150. It's all right. I was only joking.
All the way to London?
Absolutely. Brunel did it.
Ollie. Ollie doos. Yes, there he is.
Hello, Ollie. Look at the size of Ollie.
I think it's a very unique house. It's over 1,000 years old. And it's older than Westminster Abbey.
without the bodies. And we can throw a few of those in if you like. But it's got its own chapel, consecrated chapel, 800 years old. So there might be some down there. I'm not going to dig. But I just sort of, it's just a part of a microcosm of British history because it's been so much here. The Americans were here in the World War II. The French Revolution victims escaped and used this house to get away from terrorism. Wow. And the civil wars, only going way back to the 10th century. This has been Joan of Arc was sentenced not to death, but she was sentenced to burn from here by the sitting bishops of Winchester, London, and Lincoln. And in the Star Chamber, that front room there, you can see the windows. Yes. In that room, in the 1400s, Joan of Arc was told that she had to burn in Burgundy because she was a traitor to the British. And her method of execution was decided in that room while she was in prison because she had to burn because that was a traitor's death. So that was where it was decided. Right here, folks, in this house.
Since then, good taste. What was it said? The church in 1942 said the immortal word, never trust a man who wipes his arse with the same hand he stirs his tea with.
Profound words. They don't do them anymore like that. Not as profound.
He was a man of wisdom to look up to, man of few words, but profound words.
They had very profound writers in there.
Even though he drilled for Bovril every night.
This is 800 years old, 900 years old, and it's still a consecrated Catholic chapel.
Wow.
Something that's the original ceiling there, original wood from the 1200s.
1200. And I think the floor is not original.
1913. So there was no floor here before then. So those windows would be down on further down, looking up. Uri Geller, he was here one day, Uri, and there were tears coming out of the eyes. He sort of put a hand on the face, and there are actually tears coming out of
here.
And Uri Geller said, "Oh, it's on my hand," and it's true. And so there are things I just don't understand or question. And
what was Uri's take on it? He was just in shock, like you were.
Yeah. Whether or not he actually had some kind of, I don't know.
Well, he's
something to do with it because he is.
It didn't involve spoons.
Well, yeah, and it's some kind of, I don't know, some things we can't explain. I saw it.
Then there was Chamberlain. Chamberlain was very unlucky.
A nautical man.
Yeah. And Chamberlain. Oh,
Chamberlain. Yeah, he looks very much like Chamberlain. Oh, splendid.
Yeah. Note the boots.
That's very true. He stood.
Yes, Chamberlain was a marked contrast to Churchill. If he was in a barrel of tits, he'd come out sucking his thumb. Great leaders of our time.
The oldest complete roof in England. No other building has that, but everything's, the wood's the same, and nothing's been replaced, and it's been there since
1200 or early 1100.
So actually, all complete roof with the original wood.
Isn't that magnificent? If only you could get those builders nowadays, because it's so hard to get good tradesmen, and what we're looking at here, this has been up.
And look at the
800
walls.
or something
you can
years.
See the windows, the amount of stone and thickness. We could build 7-8 buildings out of these.
Okay, this is the Great Hall, what's left of it. This has got quite a good history. This is where they had the court to decide on the sentencing of Joan of Arc, who was burned in France. This took place in here, along with other sentences for local people, which included being whipped bareback up and down the high street of Thame for things like adultery and other offences. We had the house about 10 years. It's about 800 years old. It was built by Robert Grosseteste in the 1100s and has been the home of the bishops of Lincoln right up until the Reformation. I love history, and I love certain parts of history. I love the Elizabethan period. I also love the Georgian period and Victorian. But I particularly like the Elizabethan period.